now I slowly understanding, and this is where how you can apply gamification and behavioral design to classic product design jobs automatically. Because it's a switch in the mindset. You're just not okay, I'm creating a new UX. I am creating a new behavior for an employee. And if you are building products like that, you will come up with other ideas.
Hi everyone, welcome to Design Drives, where we explore why, how and what design and designers are driving forward. The mission is to interview the most forward-thinking designers and innovative creators on the planet to inspire and help you to reach your full creative potential and to make a positive impact in the world. In the episode, I chat with Fabrice Pöhlmann, behavioral designer and CIO of HelloDesignWith. During the episode, he shares how he is now implementing these principles to any kind of project and how he can use it in order to drive business goals and actually get stakeholders motivated to use gamification in order to drive business KPIs. Further, we dig into specific projects where he actually had the chance to use gamification by making health content accessible to the Generation C. I hope you enjoy the episode. All right, I'm here with Fabrice Pöhlmann. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you so much, Sebastian, that I am able to be part of the Design Drives podcast.
Yeah, really looking forward to the chat with you. I mean, we have been in a conversation for quite a while, chatting about design, about the value of design, even on your Instagram. Even I was invited once, which I really enjoyed. And I think really looking forward to learn about gamification in this episode with you, about designing games with purpose. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about your experience on just being an entrepreneur as well, starting a design agency, building this up. What are like common challenges people face or things people can learn from? And yeah, really looking forward to that. I think what would be really great for the audience though, if you could just give them a bit more context about yourself, a little bit about your journey and how did it all happen for you going into design in the first place?
Okay, so let me quickly start what I'm studying and then I jump over to the first internship and how I end up in the situation I am today. So I started this whole design thing, I think, even before I started studying, I was in a band and there was one person who had to design the shirts and the cover for the EP, and that was me. And I was like, okay, maybe I can make a living out of this whole design thing. And then I started studying communication design at university and coming more from a graphic design background, and then switched over to the brand design world and understood this a little bit more. And then, the whole digital thing popped up and people starting building fancy website and the first applications and the first SaaS products. And I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting too. So from there, I became a freelancer while I was studying, getting hired by the first agencies here in Germany and learning a little bit more about the whole digital world. And then I made a little switch because I thought, okay, there's more than the digital world. And I got into exhibition design as well, and got this perspective to my general design mind. And after this whole bachelor thing, I started studying master and design management at Hochschule Rhein-Main. And this was because I thought, okay, I am not there yet. I think there is more outside this little design bubble that I have to learn. And I wanted to learn more about business, more about startups and growing a business in general. And this was the reason that I started this master as well. During my master, I found out about this whole workshop world and the whole design sprint world. And I thought, okay, that's very interesting too. And then I got introduced into the design thinking as well. And so after a while, all the parts come together, and I think this created the design persona I am today. So a little bit of graphic design background, coming from the digital world, learning about UI and UX, and now combining this whole thing with workshops and a little bit of business knowledge, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super interesting. What was the common drive, or what is some of the things that really drive you as a designer? What keeps you motivated to going into these different directions?
Yeah. So I think it all comes to curiosity. So I am simply a very, very curious person, and I simply love to create things, especially very impulsive. So when VR came up the first time, or the second time after the big hype in the 80s and 90s, I was like, okay, I want to learn Unity. I want to test this out. And jumping from this whole, I would say, workshop path, I got into the VR world and I wanted to learn Unity. I got to the I would say, what was the Google University things they have? These micro diplomas. And I made it and I was like, okay, I have to learn VR. And I think it's all about curiosity. And today we talked about before a little bit about the whole metaverse thing and how UX in the metaverse will work. I think it's all about curiosity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've been, I think, just coming back from Web Summit, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think probably ties into that. So I think the general curiosity of new technologies and new capabilities, right, we can have as designers, and things where we can contribute, right? Anything specifically that kind of excites you? Looking forward, also maybe coming back from Web Summit with fresh inspiration on that.
The old graphic designer inside me is very interested about the whole NFT thing. So enable artists with crypto technologies, to be more independent from whatever platforms, you name it. And I think what's very interesting that the whole sustainability business world or the topic in general comes into the tech world more and more. And I think these two worlds will merge together in the next couple of years, more and more and more. There were a lot of startups at the Web Summit that have sustainable technologies, sustainable SaaS products, trying to use tech to prevent climate change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really, I think, where I think designers can try to contribute to different solutions, participate in that change. So that totally makes sense. I mean, if you think about all of these additional opportunities that come up with for designers, I think there's really opportunity for designers to also participate and contribute to these problems, like mentioned. Are there any projects that you had in the past where you really had the feeling through your skill set as a designer, you could really drive positive change? Any kind of projects that come into mind where you really had the feeling, well, we were really able to create a positive impact to the work that we are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there are two kinds of project where I think the design drives. I still really love the term of you invented here, right? With this whole podcast thing and the conference. Anyway, so the one kind of the projects are all kind of design sprint and workshop projects, because I work together with my colleagues a lot about with agile transformation projects, and you always have to talk about what is our vision, how we came up with a new strategy. And if you have this design mindset working very tangible and working by creating things and building prototypes and bringing this whole mindset into I would say, the more corporate and strategy and Excel spreadsheet world, it really, really helps people getting from a discussion to something very tangible and something really, really real, a real product, a real, I don't know, experience, whatever. And I saw this a lot, especially when it comes to changing culture, making an agile transformation. This always helps if you have a design background. And the other projects where I think I have a very big impact I can talk about is, I think we will talk about this later on when we talk about the game and gamification, is the game Nebulous that I created with health scientists, where we try to combine the world of science with the world of design. So they have evidence for a particular topic, and I have the whole UX background, and we are merging this together and come up with this amazing idea for the game. And beside Nebulous, I really love to work together with Wingcopter, one of German's sexy drone startups, I would say. They got a lot of funding and they are very cool. And I am not allowed to talk about very specific what I'm doing there, but even with their purpose, they are doing a lot for third world countries and flying medicine from one position to another position where the infrastructure is not very well, and they are using drones for that. And I am participating in this project as well as a UX designer, and you can have a very big impact with the skill set you have as a designer on this side as well.
In which kind of parts of the world they using these drones?
Southeast Asia and Africa, and you can look it up at their website, and it's very, very interesting. And they become especially famous with these kinds of works and projects at the beginning.
Yeah, so interesting. I saw similar projects in Africa actually, where they were using also drones for delivering medical supplies between hospitals, or having supply centers for certain medical supplies, basically. And then giving this to certain locations very quickly. And for them, it's the fastest way because you can go straight to where you want to go, and they don't have skyscrapers in between that would block sort of the road or any kind of legal issues that you would run into when creating such an infrastructure. So they can really, I think, innovate there.
Absolutely.
Which I think is sort of a topic on its own, which I always find very interesting. Is like, like how much more space of innovation you get if you take away constraints or change them. So yeah, super interesting. Talking about the game maybe for a second, because I know that you have a lot of experience working with games and driving behavior change through that, or driving new habits. I think we were often once talking about. Can you talk more about that game that you were designing and maybe some of the learnings and wins and fails maybe you had along the process? I think that's going to be interesting.
Absolutely. So this whole project started when Professor Dr. Daraczynski, a tricky name for everybody that speaks English, right, came to me and said, "Hey, Fabrice, you are a UX designer. We have this project in mind. And we have evidence about that, especially teenagers are not very well in finding and applying health-related informations. And this causes a lot of mental diseases, not in a very dramatical way. So not everybody of these teenagers already has something like a depression or something, but they're showing the first signs of it. Mm-hmm. And they have evidence about that. This problem roots in the ability or not ability to find health-related informations. What I mean by that is, think you are a 12-year-old girl or a 12-year-old boy, and you struggling with something, you have no idea who you should talk to if you are shy to talk to your parents or friends or whatever. And you have no idea where you can look up information, how to cure yourself a little bit. And especially when it comes to the web, there are millions of informations out there. Nothing is very trustworthy. Yes, you can check out the best Instagram psychologist, but I didn't really recommend this. And I think the most teenagers understand that this is not the best source of truth or the best source of knowledge. And even if you have, I would say, locations or institutions in your town, they don't connect very well with the teenagers. And the problem over there is that their, I would say, information material or the way they communicate is not, I would say, state of the art how teenagers communicate with each other. So think about you having something like Pro Familia. They are a consultancy for families. So if you have problems with your family, you can go over there, and they handing out flyers at the doctor, and they are very bad designed. And I don't think that this is how teenagers want to communicate. And coming back to the game, Kevin came up with this idea, hey, maybe we can create a user experience with this game where teenagers are more likely to connect with these local institutions to understand, hey, I can go there if I have a problem. And this is the whole start of this project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. It's a content problem, communication issue, right? Yeah. And I think one of the difficulties, I assume, is that you have to create this content pre-made, right? So you have to kind of, and there's a lot of content, right? Like you also need to make it accessible for different types of users, right? So you have the people that would probably prefer like written content. Yes. And then you have maybe the Gen Z type of users, they would probably prefer some kind of other content, but it also depends on the situation, maybe a little bit. So any kind of learnings in terms of the design process there, also to validate some of the ideas that you may had in the project, because maybe you come up with certain ideas, but how do you validate if they actually would adapt better than the maybe existing ones?
Absolutely. We had a lot of amazing fails, I would say, but a lot of amazing learnings too. So when we started designing the game, so to make it clear right here, it's a mobile application and it's a location-based game. So imagine it like something like Pokemon Go. So you have a predefined path you have to experience in your city. And while you are experiencing this path, you are making stop at the specific locations where you can learn about the health-related informations. And at these locations, you can collect QR codes. You scan the QR codes, and then you get voice messages for the whole story, for the whole location-based game. And this is how you can, bring informations to teenagers with gamification. And when we started at the beginning, it was clear that the first user testing or the first MVP will be tested in schools. So we only have to make this adaptable or usable for teenagers between 11 and 13 years old. And there will be a school with around about 100, 200 students that will test this app at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So we moved on and built the first prototype, the classic process, a little bit of user research, a little bit of Figma design, a little bit of user interface design. Boom, you have your prototype. And then we thought, okay, maybe it's a good idea to go into the lab and try how teenagers will interact with the application. Mm-hmm. And I'm lucky that, Kevin is a professor at a university and we can go to the usability lab. And I was super excited about it because I never tested an application in a big usability lab before. And I thought that's a very good idea. And I built up the whole setting at the usability testing day, and the teenagers are coming in separately. The whole situation was already a little bit tricky because it is still COVID. Everybody has to wear the mask and you have to take care of the distance and other things. And then I realized, okay, 12-year-old kids are very insecure and they are don't have a lot of self-confidence. And they saw this whole test situation as a test. Even if you are telling them we are done testing you, we are testing the application and all the things. And they got not scary, but super excited. And it simply was a tricky situation to test this an application in a usability lab where you record the voice, where you record the eyes, where you record everything with youth or with teenagers. Because they are simply not made for it. But the good thing is that we all learned that they understand the story. They understand the, I would say, general usability patterns we created for the game. And I had a little chat with them after that. And I had a good feeling what we have to change and what was already good at the application. Beside this whole tricky test situation, we learned another good thing that because it is a location-based game, you only just can minimal test a location-based experience inside a lab where you're not moving from A to B. And this was very tricky. And I underestimated this a little bit, how smooth the prototype will be tested by the teenagers. And I think these are the two big learnings beside many others. But first of all, these two are very, very interesting.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing with creating prototypes sometimes. Like how much data do you have for the prototype, right? Because in a prototype, often you have to build it, you have to customize a kind of for the solution because it's very difficult depending on what tool you use to plug in like real-time data and kind of conceptualize it. I always find that, challenging when creating prototypes. So the same goes for if you create like AI-based prototypes, you have to do tools like Wizard of Oz or, do something in that direction because you're not going to, so like how much do you going to lean into the actual development in order to validate, and then it's always the question, okay, like, is it worth it? Like, how unsure, how much of is it an assumption versus like something we are more confident about, right? Yeah. Maybe another thing that's probably interesting there is you had tested this in this one scenario. And I mean, you also, I think you have been reading the book from Matt Wallard around like habits, I think. Yeah. And I mean, like one of the things that you, I guess, like wanted to create is sort of positive behavior outcomes, right? I think you had probably certain goals with the game, right? About like how people are going to adapt it. I'm not so sure were you able in the project also to look into the long-term behaviors that would come from such an application or any kind of learning, because it's become challenging with a project because how far can you prototype towards that, right? You cannot give them the Figma prototype if you don't have real data and say like, use it for a week, tell me how it worked. Yeah. So any kind of learning, how much you can look into the long-term behavior outcomes of your application, even though maybe the project itself is not set up for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually you have to check out two different kinds of behavior change, right? The first kind of behavior change you want to achieve is that are these teenagers use the app how you want them to use it. So that's the first thing. And you can test this with all the UX and usability things. And that's actually the easy part, I would say. No, right? If now the MVP is ready, We already tested it, the whole coded thing, and the usability patterns and the whole UX works fine. I'm happy with that. But the second, the actually interesting behavior change you want to measure is first, teenagers look up their local health institutes, and they don't do this right now. They are checking the health institutes after they're using this application. And currently, I can't tell if this is the case because we are currently measuring this, because we are just had a group of 20 teenagers at the very first testing. Next week, there will be tested with 60 teenagers. And we will move on at least for a half year collecting data at schools while they are playing the game. And I am happy that I'm working together with scientists, and they came up with a very good concept for the study, how they measure this behavior change. Maybe we can have a chat in a half year where I can tell you exactly if the behavior change teenagers are using the local health institute informations, yes or not. And we are simply have to measure this afterwards.
So you have to just look at the performance, basically look into the KPIs that you have to find. When you talk about the scientific process, is there anything you can share from, because you were saying that you're working with science, they have certain ideas in terms of like how you could maybe foresee this, right? I mean, like you can never really foresee it, but any kind of learnings on that in terms of like, for example, to make more concrete, like a certain question that you would ask to sort of kind of look into that long-term outcome. Any kind of learnings maybe in terms of like how you have to phrase a question, maybe, or kind of use that interview in its limited capability to kind of nudge and explore this territory, which is obviously a guess, right? But you can't really know. The KPI is gonna actually tell it, like you're saying, right? But any kind of learnings, like how you have to set up the interview to kind of look into that long-term behavior. So any kind of questions you were asking there?
Yeah, I think there are also two perspectives on this whole thing. So when it comes to the whole behavior thing, I already tried to build as a behavioral designer as much as behavioral design things into the game as possible, right? Mm-hmm. If you are applying the classic hook model by EIL, with the trigger things and the variable rewards and how you build and habit forming product, you can apply this to the whole game from the first experience on. So I hope that the teenagers are coming to this app more and more and more often to get connected to these locations, have health information locations in the area as often as possible. When it comes to measuring the success of the application, first of all, we implementing a form inside the application where the users can simply fill out a couple of questions. And I am not 100% sure what these questions will be. There will be more or less direct, very direct. Do you know about this? Did you recognize blah, blah, blah? Could you, I don't know, tell where you should go when you have this or that problem? And with this form, Kevin and his whole team of scientists will come up and they implement this into the application. And what we also do is we will send every participant of the game this form via a push notification afterwards as well. So, and beside this whole form, this measuring of how the teenagers are learning with the game, I definitely would take a couple focus groups, a couple teenagers after the half year, and interviewing them pretty free and with a free conversation and understanding how they experience their environment. And I am not a big fan maybe because I'm just a designer and not a scientist, and it's more an empathetic thing to understand how is this human right next to me reacting to my questions. Not a very scientific way to make an interview actually, but I think with a very empathetic mindset, you can understand, are they able to repeat what you're trying to tell them with the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes totally sense. And I mean, we mentioned the book as well about like creating hooks, right?
Yeah.
And very often, I think the methods of gamification are sometimes used for business-driven outcomes as well, right? I think this is sort of like what's driving the industry probably most,
Sure.
right? In your case, actually, you were actually using gamification um, for uh, for something very not so much a business goal, but actually sort of a human behavior goal, right? You wanted to create and it's sort of like, I mean, it's not really a business that you have been working on. It's like scientific content around health, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make that more accessible. So it's actually a very positive human behavior outcome, and maybe different also to most of the behavior design projects. I think that when people talk about behavior design, it's also there's an overlap of growth design as well, or any kind of learnings what most of the behavior design projects are about. And from your experience, are they mostly more driven around the business, or how much of these projects are also maybe considering maybe positive human outcomes, which is, I think, in best case, it goes together. It's the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So business KPIs overlays with the human KPIs. But any kind of thoughts on that topic?
First of all, with the nebulous game, it's very hard to apply all the habit forming things because it's a once in a lifetime experience. So you're kind of building a habit around the application, and that's very hard to applying these whole behavior change magic you can do. But I always try, and I am lucky that the most of the projects I am working on are more about a positive behavior change, and from a human perspective and not from a business perspective. And but I think that the most applications are using it to drive business goals. I don't know, reducing churn, optimizing for when it comes to landing pages, optimizing conversion rates, and I don't know, making the whole UX a little bit more addictive and all the things. I think a lot of companies are using this for this reason, but there are, especially when it comes to the whole Wingcopter thing that I'm working on. You are working with pilots, and you have to understand their behavior, and you have to be very careful what kind of behavior you are triggering with the interface you are building, because if they're making the mistake, the drone will go down and destroy something. And if you can understand their behavior as good as possible and working with a good user interface, with a good UX against it. Yeah, but like I said, I am lucky that I'm working a lot for behavioral design in the human perspective and not with the driving business outcomes that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you mentioned about the helicopter, because I think as a designer, you really are on a little bit the sideline. They are like as often like unknown about the actual process and kind of coming into a project, kind of learning on the go, and then just working, like you said, with the UX towards supporting that. And I guess with the helicopter example, also thinking about, like what is the visual hierarchy on the screen if the user comes into this situation? Do we want to prompt this button or rather the other button? What do we make primary and secondary, and all of these different questions? I think it's easier in the design process if you could somehow say that you are the user yourself. But if you're really relying on expert opinion for the whole flow, that I think is also always interesting in the design process, because then you really have to work with someone and run them through the whole experience and validating everything, because it's very difficult to call the shots yourself, which is easy for sort of like straightforward things.
Absolutely.
Where you can imagine yourself, but very difficult for experts.
Absolutely. And I think the whole project with Wingcopter teaches me this so hard, because as a UX designer, and you are not an expert in aerodynamics or aircrafts and all these things, you can't do anything without the experts. You have to set up a very collaborative, co-creative working environment. Otherwise, you will not come to a very good product at the end of this whole thing. If you, as a designer, you can set up any kind of shoe or fashion shop in the world, because they have the same principles all over the world, and you are kind of the same persona building this thing. This is an absolutely different thing when it comes to building very specific products like driving drones.
But I think that's kind of the fun as a designer.
Yes.
Well, I think we are kind of looped into, we get into projects where we're really not the experts. And we are like the person that has the least knowledge in the room, probably around the topic, and then really have to kind of learn. I think that's what I think is so exciting as a designer. You constantly have to you go into new topics and you learn so much.
Absolutely.
Specifically as a design consultant, like in your case, you really tap into new industries, and sort of every project is like a new learning opportunity, right?
Absolutely. And this comes back to the curiosity thing that I answered at the beginning, right? So it's all about curiosity. If you are not curious about the business of your clients, you have a problem. So and it will become more and more complex. So the most shops and the most easy designs are already built, and now clients come with very complex problems, and you have to be curious as a designer. And especially, maybe we can talk about this later on a little bit, especially when it comes to building your own design business, right? If you are not able to apply to the situation of the client, to be open-minded and accept that you are not the smartest person in the room when it comes to the topic, you definitely have a problem.
Yeah. I was talking to the vice president of IBM once, also on design. There was one of the quotes also from the episode was that he was saying, like no designer will ever create a great design not caring about the problem they're solving. So it's impossible, right? The greatness about or innovation is a great design, however you want to call it, it's just possible if you care and if you really dig deep. So super interesting. You have been learning so much about behavior thinking, behavior design, gamification then throughout your projects. If you now work on, say, a project where this is not so much part of the brief, where you maybe work on a project that has maybe different targets, how much do you sort of automatically start to think already about these things in the project, about like the behavior of the user, sort of how much can you apply the principles of gamification, behavioral thinking to projects where this might be not on the forefront of the brief? Because the reality is, I think maybe with most of the briefs, also from the audience, the designers are working in, that might be not on the forefront of the brief or the project. But I think there's a lot of things, meaning it hooks, meaning it other methods that you maybe also come across in your learnings that I think are very great to apply on design projects in different fields.
100%. I can talk a little bit about another project, what I'm working on currently, where we are, I'm using the word disrupting the whole real estate management market currently a little bit, because in Germany, the real estate market is all paperwork. So old people are stacking another piece of paper on each other, and you're having a messy chaos of paperwork because, managing a very big piece of real estate is very complicated. You have a lot of paperwork. And if you're making this whole thing digital, you are actually changing how the people will work in the future. You're not giving them a piece of software and telling them, hey, this is going to be easier. No, you actually change the way how they behave on a daily basis in their daily work life. And it took me a while to understand this, right? At the beginning, as a UX designer, you are super excited. Yeah, you look at this, flow chart. You look at this fancy wireframe. No. It's all about thinking about, okay, when this person will come to work, what is the behavior that this person has to do to, bring the most value to the company or make the job the easiest way or having the best experience? I don't know. You're making a task, budding, you give them a little gift. And if they are collecting a couple gifts or a couple points at the end of the year, they get a bonus money from their company or something. So, and now I slowly understanding, and this is where how you can apply gamification and behavioral design to classic product design jobs automatically, because it's a switch in the mindset. You're just not okay, I'm creating a new UX. I am creating a new behavior for an employee. And if you are building products like that, you will come up with other ideas.
Yeah, that's so interesting, right? I mean, the question is very different, right? Like you said, like if you think about it, the person that you'll be designing for, maybe that expert user working with the real estate company, if you're working with the real estate company or trying to sell the product, like also how you position the maybe the SAS product, right? So, but if you kind of connect it to the business goals, what is the behavior we want the employee actually to create for the business, right? And we want that this user is highly motivated about the work, really enjoys going to work, feels motivated about doing these things in the software, which is the actual work for the business he's working on, and kind of align that with the goals of the business. I mean, also the it's going to be easier to kind of sell the product. That's like another story, but it also creates a positive human impact. But it's about asking a little bit different questions.
It absolutely is. And especially when you start a product design business and the people at the beginning, the stakeholders and the techie people inside the project, they don't understand why you're asking these questions in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I am using the principle behavioral statements at the beginning. So a lot of people are familiar with writing user stories. As Mark, I wanted blah, blah, blah. But writing behavioral statements is a little bit different. You are writing down at the beginning of building a feature, building a product, what is the behavior you want the person to make? And at the beginning, everybody thinks, oh, that's super strange. I don't understand this, why we are doing this. But as soon as you are showing them what comes out of this behavioral statement and showing them the first screen, they are, okay, that's the reason we are building this like this. It's very interesting. But in the first place, everybody is very skeptical about starting with behavior instead of starting with classic UX or whatever.
Making the same experiences. So it's like if you work with business stakeholders, right? And then like maybe like we have an idea about like what about application we want to develop, right? Sometimes it could feel like, why are you asking these questions, right? It feels like people questioning the overall idea, but like it's really comes down to creating the essence of like why are we doing what we're doing. And then like you said in the beginning, people are gonna feel a little bit confused that you're asking these kind of a little bit stupid generic questions, and they don't see like how it's going to influence your UX work, but it does, because it's going to allow you to come up with ideas in the flow that going to nurture that actual business KPI that we're working towards, right? And if that's never transparent.
Totally. And it's very interesting that the people from the product design world don't get it yet 100%. Slowly it will come. And I think behavioral design will be big in the future, hopefully. But the people from the cultural transformation worlds and the agile transformation and digital transformation world, they already understand this, because we have a lot of clients that are asking us, hey, how can we change the culture in our company? We know that people don't behave the way how they should behave. And now, okay, culture is connected to behavior change, because the repetition of a particular behavior becomes the culture. And it's funny that they get it. And if you are coming up with ideas, behavioral design ideas for changing behavior, they are instantly getting it and playing with this whole concept and the methodology very, very well. Nobody's skeptic, because they understand that behavior is the actual drive over there to change something.
So true. I mean, if you think about that, behavior is driven by environments, right? Yeah. So you can see this if people join like a different environment, they start to adapt their behaviors. Yeah. Wherever, if they go to a new country, joining a new company, going into a room and kind of like feeling what's the vibe in the room, people are always going to adjust their behavior. This is even true for applications. I mean, you just have the rectangle here that you kind of work on, but like everything in this rectangle, the brand identity, the way you kind of have the conversation with the user, how you set up the interface, how it all ties together within a user's life. When do you bring up a notification? All of these things, they really matter in terms of like how are people going to behave even within an application. And I think that's not often really well understood, right? I mean, if maybe also many years ago, I think with people working, if people don't set up time in the project to really dig into that level, then you just get a functional solution, but you will never create that much of an impact, right? Because you don't consider all of these questions.
Absolutely. And when you now understand the whole behavior thing as a designer, you actually understand, okay, what's the impact I'm creating with my design. So like you mentioned before, changing the environment, changing people's behavior. So interior designers don't think about behavior change at the beginning. They are designing a beautiful interior. But if you have an interior designer that knows behavioral science and behavioral economics, they really know why they are changing, this color to this, or using this sofa and this sofa, or this chair, whatever. It's very interesting. And this is where, design comes together with science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, I mean, totally agreeing what you said about like interior design. Actually, in fact, I've been in my design studies, I've been digging into design history a little bit. Mm-hmm. And one of the things with great architects was specifically, back in the days, I mean, people really don't know about that, how much they were thinking about behavior. Yeah. So if you're looking at some of the masterpieces of architecture, where people kind of looking at that surface outcome, right? The actual building, like the impressive building, etc. If you really dig into how they were designing such buildings, such masterpieces that people know, right? How much they were thinking about how people entering the room, like what's the feeling you want to create when entering the room, like how do we position the building so it catches the right light at which time of the day, because maybe this building is more for these kind of events, so we want to have that light setting at the beginning of the day. So they really were considering all environmental aspects towards the human behavior that actually influences the perceptions and like the behavior that happens in the building, right? Yeah. And that's so interesting. I mean, architecture, like the overlap of architecture and behavior, sort of like there could be another episode, maybe on its own. Super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And bringing quickly for one sentence back the whole game that I created with Kevin and the health scientists. This is the reason when it comes to behavior, I used voice messages instead of text or something else, because I don't have evidence about it, but I believe that teenagers are more carefully listen to something rather than just reading a text they get. And the fun part about this whole game is that all these voice messages are recorded with voice actors, and they are speaking like a real story, like you can imagine. Like, I don't know, it's very, very cool. And I'm if we can achieve some scientific evidence that the teenagers changing their behavior, this is definitely the best project that I created in the past.
Mm-hmm. Great. I mean, also feels great as a designer, right? If we see like we're really creating positive change for people. Talking maybe for the end a little bit about design entrepreneurship, founding a design studio, founding a design agency. You've been in this for a few years now. What would be your advice towards people who are interested also to start their own agency? What kind of things you have been learning that people should look after?
Sure. I would love to talk about this for a couple of seconds. So, like I said at the beginning, I am coming from a UX design freelancer background, what I made for a couple of years. And I would say this is the perfect foundation to start an agency or become a design entrepreneur in the future, because you are learning the basic business skills about taxes, about running a business, about marketing yourself as a freelancer very quickly. And you can't make a lot of mistakes, right? Because if you make a mistake, it only affects yourself. And you can go back from freelancing if you have the expert knowledge, getting back into an agency or whatever, but pretty quickly. So the risk is very low, actually. Mm-hmm. So first of all, as a freelancer, you can learn all the business skills. This is very important. And what is important as well, from my perspective, you have to be confident as a designer and with your expert knowledge, and build it up while you are studying, building up while you are freelancing in agencies at the beginning. But today I learn constantly for sure, but I'm not caring about my expert knowledge that much anymore. I'm focusing more on the business. And that's a good thing if you want to build up an agency. And because you have to accept the fact that if you are building an agency, you will not be the designer anymore, because there will be better designers, hopefully, in your agency than yourself. And you have to learn other skills. You have to learn how to make a very good human resource, finding these persons and how to benefit them very quickly, how to develop them very quickly, how to set up the whole agency infrastructure. I absolutely underestimated how complicated it is to set up the whole infrastructure we are currently at HelloDesign 10 people, and it's complicated how they're share their information, how they communicate, how they make their appointments, how they put their files into folders, how they get their German tags things right. There are so many things you have to care about. And coming back, how to get started at the beginning, I think start as a freelancer, you can build a foundation. And then if you are getting too many clients, what is not often a problem as a freelancer, but sometimes you can hire the first person half time. So just for half of the week. And if you're getting more clients, then you can hire the person full time. And maybe you can slowly, and as soon as you are 3 people, something you're working off very often with, then you really should consider to starting your own company and becoming more like a management person. And especially at the beginning, you will be 50% management, 50% freelancer, designer. And you can slowly grow from there. And what really gave me confidence as well is that try out different business models and don't only do the time and material thing. You get paid for your time. Maybe you can come up with an idea how to sell, I don't know, design sprints or something else. So make it a little bit more reliable than the classic agency model. This is a tip as well. And I think that the last thing is, even to market yourself and to build your confidence, find a little bit of a niche that helps you to separate you from other agencies. Because let's face it, there are a million agencies out there. There are a million consultancies out there try to selling you things and try to be different. And if you have something, in my case, it's combining science with design and combining it with behavioral design. That's my expert thing or my niche thing. It makes you more confident when you are talking to clients, building your websites and making your marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agreeing. It's interesting what you mentioned also, that you should maybe start out as a freelancer before maybe founding like an actual company already.
Yeah.
You have been also something mentioned so interesting, which is a common misconception about like all kind of design leadership roles, even if it's a owner of an agency or a design director, that doesn't mean like that design director is the best designer. Maybe he was the best designer, but he probably can't keep being the best designer and doing a design director position. Depends always, even on the director position, what level. But certainly at some point of the sort of like design hierarchy, there are different questions you have to answer. And then it's a lot about knowing how design works, maybe, but you're gonna get a little bit more rusty on the tools. That's, I think, a little bit more unavoidable, right? And there are other things like communication, like how do you sell design? I know a lot of great designers who are not good at selling design. I know a lot of designers who are great at selling and maybe slightly less good on design. I have to say the people that are really good at telling a story and making a good communication, they can have a lot of impact as well, and sometimes even more than the people that create a good design but then not know how to talk about it.
Yeah.
Just one question on that. You're working with different clients, right?
Yeah.
How do you ensure that your innovation comes through working from the external side? Because you're working with partners, right? You kind of developing innovations. As a last question, what are your learnings on making ensure your innovation as you're creating as a designer actually comes through on the actual client side?
That's a hard one. Even the question and the process of bringing the innovation from my head to the real world inside the client universe. So I think at the end of the day, it comes to a very good collaborative process. And as soon as you imagine yourself as the agency, you have to deliver something and then you are out, you will never see your product in the real world. But as soon as you understand yourself as part of the team of your clients, the chances go up that they are way more committed to what you are creating together and really, really launch it. And still today, even if we are taking the Nebulous, the game example, I feel myself part of the team. I communicate that I am part of the Nebulous team. Even if I got hired by them as HelloDesign, I am part of the Nebulous team. And I feel myself always as part of the team as the kind, because otherwise I am not committed to the idea. They are not committed to the idea. And this really brings innovation to life. And I think that's, it's interesting that you are talking about this question right here, because I think this is the general problem of consultancies and agencies, because there will be a tipping point inside the design or innovation process where you will be out, because you are just there for a particular time, and you have to understand what is the perfect timing to get out of the process and let them run with their ideas, what you created with them together. I think these points are the most important ones.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, there would be plenty of more topics to go into. Like, I just think like we just scratching the surface. There's so much more we can kind of get into. Also, when it comes to your experience building an agency, that I think would be interesting for the audience. But I think we have to wrap it up because of time.
Sure.
But Fabrice, thank you so much for taking the time, sharing all of your insights here with the audience. I think we definitely learned a lot.
Sebastian, thank you so much that I am able to be part of the Design Drives podcast, sharing the stage with so many amazing people. And thank you so much for building Design Drives.
Thank you. All right, that was the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments or by tagging me in a post what were the biggest learnings for you in the episode. I'm always super curious about that. If the episode provided you a lot of value, make sure to follow and subscribe and share it with friends or others so they also have the chance to learn and grow themselves. All right, until next time, cheers.